Hi guys, Nick here with BitGalaxis, and today I'm continuing on a series where I'm building up a space scene. And in the first video we created the scene, we set up the skybox, added a couple of ships, and for this video we are adding some lasers. And this is really just the beginning part of that because the lasers don't do anything yet, they just fire. But I'll show you how I've started the setup on this. So the very first thing I've created was a laser emitter prefab. And this laser emitter prefab only does a couple of things. It's basically just saying set up the ability to fire. We're going to set our fire rate, and then we're going to select the object that we want to fire. And so it takes the input, fires based on the fire rate, and then what it's firing is that prefab. I have one attached to my microfighter, this little red ship here, and you can see it right here. So the other thing that the emitter does for us, which we haven't coded, it just kind of comes inherent, is that it allows us to dictate which direction we fire the laser. So in this case, if I were to rotate my emitter, it would fire totally to the right of the ship. I'm going to go ahead and put that back to rotation of 0. So right now, the way the emitter is set on this ship is it's going to fire forward, and it's going to start the laser right between these two. So if I wanted to, I could actually add a second laser emitter prefab and fire two lasers, and they would fire at the exact same rate, the exact same time. So if we're going to go look at that script, let's go ahead and do that now. And in this script, you can see we have our float for our last fire, which is private, and then our float for the fire rate, and then our game object, which is the laser prefab we've created. So in our update, we're basically just checking to see if we have fire 1 button down, and we're also checking to see if the current time is greater than the last time we fired plus the fire rate. So if the last time we fired was 2 seconds ago plus our fire rate of 1, well, that means that's 1 second ago. Well, the current time is greater than that amount, so it allows us to fire. And then what it does is it sets our last fire, last time we were able to fire, to the current time, and that resets that process. And if that's the case, once it says that, it goes to the next line, which is fire laser. And then in fire laser, we are actually instantiating the object. So we're taking that prefab, we're finding our emitter's transform and rotation, transform position and transform rotation, and we're setting that new prefab there. And whatever we do there, that's it. We're just creating it. We're not actually doing anything else. So when the laser starts moving, guess what? That's actually part of the prefab for the laser. So let's go look at the prefab for the laser. So, laser prefab. Right here, projectile. So there's a couple things I want to note about the laser prefab here. We'll go up and open it. Now you can see the laser projectile is actually an empty game object, except I've added the laser beam script. So that only does one thing. That sets the speed with which it's moving. It's going to move forward, and it's going to move forward at 70. So the cylinder itself, the actual beam, is a cylinder as a child object of the projectile. And there are two things that I want to note about how I've set this up. The transform position on the Z is 0.5. So I actually had it here, and I've moved it up 0.5 because it's actually 1 unit long, or it's actually half a unit long. So I've moved it up. So when it fires, the laser actually leaves from here. It doesn't get created like halfway through like this. This is 0 basically. We want to create it where we actually wholly in front of where we want it created, not just partially through it. So we're putting it in front of the ship, not midway through the emitter. The second thing that I've done is I've rotated it 90 degrees. Theoretically, I mean, you could set the projectile itself to be 90, but the problem you face is when you instantiate it, it's not going to instantiate it at 90 degrees. It's going to instantiate it at the parent, or at the emitter's rotation and transform. So we don't want that. We want the parent 0, 0, 0 to match the emitter 0, 0, 0. We don't want to be modifying that in the script that fires it. We want to make sure that the laser itself is actually coming out. So I've made the cylinder rotated 90 so that the projectile itself is zero. That's its zero rotation. Is it's 90 degrees from the cylinder itself. The cylinder mesh, if we didn't do this and we left the script as is, our cylinders would fire out like this, moving forward, going pew, pew, and that's obviously not how a laser moves. So we'll get that back to 90, set this back to 0.5, oh, not 5, 0.5, and that is how we created it. So the end result is, oh, actually before we get to that, let's go ahead and look at that laser beam script. Laser beam script, the speed we've set to 70 by default, but I also have a private float Genesis, which is when I created it. There could be a better name, I just use that one. But in the start, I say Genesis equals the current time. And then, in the update, if the current time is greater than the original creation time plus 3 seconds, so I just kind of set that as default, destroy the object so that there's not, 100 objects sitting out there, 100 laser beams just flying around. And then, otherwise, we are just pushing that laser forward at the rate of speed. And that's pretty much it. So, we go back into the game. You see, basically, we're just firing, and that's the gist of it. So there's a lot more that can be done to this. It needs to be optimized with object pooling because instantiating new lasers every single time is not great. You probably noticed in my prefab on the cylinder, I removed the capsule collider because when I fire it, if my ship when it's moving is actually hitting those lasers and it bumps it up, which is really not good. So the point of it is we're going to ideally have a collider, but not have the collider affect us. So a lot of work to do. We'll have a lot of that covered in the next video. If you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.